Hey guys, Brian coming to you once again from the TST garage. As you can see beside me, I have a 2018 CB650F from Honda. Today we're going to be installing what you see in my hands, these BL6 style signals. Up here in the front, we're going to have to use a pod signal adapter plate, but we could get into that as we go through the install. I'll talk about the parts that I'm using and why I am using them. It's very, very straightforward, guys. Not too many bolts have to come out. Two just go back in, so let's just get started. All right, guys, so with a 5mm T-handle, we're going to go ahead and take out the two screws that are holding in our front stay / headlight assembly. Can be a little cumbersome to get down in there. Just take that, set that off to the side. As you can see there, once that second one drops out, it actually does start to want to articulate down. So you're going to want to support that for just a second. So before that articulates all the way down, I'm going to put this little microfiber cloth on my front mudguard just to make sure that when it does articulate down, it doesn't hit anything. Now at this point, I'm going to reduce the strain on any of these wires just by taking a little bungee, wrapping around my handlebar. It's kind of an extra step, but it just makes me feel a little bit better when I'm not putting strain on any of my important electrical connections, such as the gauge cluster or the headlight or anything like that. Okay, so with that kind of in a pretty sturdy place, we can actually start working on the signals themselves. We're going to want to locate this right side plug. It's going to have a little zip tie around it. It's one of those reusable ones. You could just unclip it, set it off to the side. We'll want it later. And then, as with many Honda plugs, these are very easy to see. There's a little clip right there. Pull back on that clip. If you could get your fingernail underneath it, good. If you can't, maybe look for a flathead screwdriver. Take that out, and then the next step is actually going to be doing that same thing on the other side. Now this is kind of optional. I like to take this front little carbon fiber guard off to give myself a little bit more access here. If you guys can somehow get out this signal without doing that, you could go ahead and try. I'm going to show you how I go about taking this off though. So I'm going to take this panel right here, kind of lift up a little bit, and release the small ear of this panel. Don't want to force anything here. So there we go. Got one side up. I want to do the same to the other side. So up, pull up and over. There we go. Starting to lift up a little bit. Now we want to work the edges up and around. And then sure enough, should pop right out just like that. We can set that off to the side. We're obviously going to want that later as well. All right, guys, so we're going to start over here on this left signal. I'm going to need a Phillips head. There's one screw on the back of that signal. We got to take that out. Again, set that off to the side. At this point, we can go ahead and pull our signal out, route our OEM wire back through it. With our plug making its way out, we can go ahead and set our signal off to the side. Going to want to grab a needle nose set of pliers. There's this small metal insert that actually fits into the rubber grommet that was mounting our signal. So we're going to want to reach in, grab the small tab that kind of extends itself, and then in a downward and out motion, we're going to want to steer around our gauge cluster and start to wiggle this thing out. You could give it a little push on the back, maybe reorient the pliers, try to get a good grip on them. You could also pull the fairings a tiny bit, just try to give yourself a little bit more wiggle room. Let's see, I'm starting to get that out. I'm jammed up against the gauge cluster. So there we go, guys. You see, with a little bit of finesse, it'll make its way past the gauge cluster, and then you just got to get it out of that rubber grommet. There we go. Set that off to the side as well. And at this point, we can actually just go ahead and articulate down this rubber grommet. It will pop right out, comes this way out. So we're going to want to repeat that step on the other side. All right, guys, so with our OEM signals removed, we have a couple options here to replace them. You'll see here I have a flush mount style signal and then this stem mounted BL6 signal. If you're going to go with the flush mount, you're not going to need this pod signal adapter kit that I have in my hand, these black plastic plates. You will still want to pick up a harness converter that's going to allow you to go from the bullet connectors found in our signals straight to an OEM connector that will plug right into your bike. So with that being said, we're actually going to touch on the installation of the BL6. Again, if you are going to do this flush mount installation, you could actually just take this washer and this nut off the signal, thread your wire through the bike, throw them back on the other side, and tighten that down against this little mounting area that they gave you. Again, we're going to be doing the BL6 signal, so we will need this pod signal adapter kit. We're going to set our flush mount off to the side, our harness converters off to the side as well. We'll need those in a little bit. Let's identify some parts on our pod signal adapter kit. We have plate A, plate B, and then a flat black washer. We're actually going to ditch both of the plate A's. We don't need those for that installation. We're also going to set one of the B plates and one of the washers off to the side to use for our other side. At this point, we can go ahead and take our BL6 signal and take the nut off of our wire, thread one of these bullet connectors through at a time. Go ahead and take that lock washer off as well. Should be able to pass both of them through at the same time on that. Then at this point, we can go ahead and take one of our B plates, make sure that that text is going to face the inside. So mounting the smooth side towards the signal, and drop that down on. Put your signal into that mounting position on the front fairing. Take that black washer, throw that down on, and then in the reverse order, we're going to go lock washer and actual nut. So at this point, we can go ahead, start to tighten down the nut on that stem. It's a little bit cumbersome to get in there, so just do your best with your fingers until you can't go anymore. You could try to kind of hold the nut in place and then turn the signal back, but you don't want to induce too much stress on that stem, so I would refrain from doing that if you can. At this point, we could go ahead and take a 14mm socket, open-ended wrench rather, actually. Just barely have enough clearance in there to get almost a quarter of a turn. We're going to do that little bit by little bit and tighten this down a little. Now keep in mind your front fairing is kind of facing down at the moment, so we're going to want to make sure that our signal is also doing the same. We could always kind of fine tune it once we get it up into our position, but for right now, that's how we're going to leave it. We're going to grab a harness converter at this point, opening our package, take our bullet connectors, and you'll see these leads do have a little bit of color on them, so you're going to want to connect the yellow lead to the yellow lead on the signal. Pretty straightforward there. Black to black. And then it's at this point that I'm actually going to tape this connector up. I don't want these little sleeves on the bullet connectors moving around, because if they do, you will have a short there and your signal will not run. Now I do just want to touch on the fact that the OEM signals are a 3-position plug, which does mean that they have your running light are in your signals. When you are converting to some LED style signals up front, you're not going to have that running light feature anymore. So if that is something that you guys want to keep, that's something to consider before you even jump into this installation. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and tape this connector up, plug it into our OEM connector, and then repeat the process on the other side. All right, so with both of our signals installed on either side, we can actually go ahead and start the reassembly. Just before we do that, I do want to check that all of my electrical connections have been made. So I do have my right signal, I do have my left, good to go. So right, at this point, we're going to want to make sure that the bottom of where our front kind of stay has been sitting, there's these 2 little rubber grommets. We're going to want to make sure that those insert themselves nicely down into the base of that triple tree. We're going to want to remove this little bungee if you had one there. Set that off to the side, and it's at this point that we can go ahead and grab that top faceplate again. There's kind of an order to do this here, so we're going to want to start the same way that we came out, just in reverse. So start with this front locking tab. Going to want to insert that like so. And then we can start to work our way around the edges. So pressing down, down again, and make sure that you pull this fairing back just a tiny bit, but also locate a small tab, I'll show you on this side, at the same time, and then that should just snap right into place like you kind of just heard. So now same thing on this side. So this small tab, you want to insert into the red portion of the fairing, the painted portion rather, and pull that out and over, snap it down in. There we have it. Faceplate mounted again. So we could go ahead and grab those two M6 screws. You're gonna want to come up. This little faceplate lifts up over the mounting points, then you actually mount down through it. That's why these have little shoulders on them. So once we get that in the proper orientation, go ahead and take one of these and drop straight down through it. All right, guys, so with our front fairing and headlight assembly mounted back up to our triple tree, we have one final check, and that's just to make sure that we didn't somehow dislodge any connections. Now, I will touch on the fact that you'll notice that this is flashing at the proper rate. If you did just go from your OEM signals straight into a BL6 or any LED signal for that matter, you will actually probably run into what we like to refer to as a hyperflash. Now that's because your OEM relay is trying to tell you that you have a bulb out. We know you don't, you just replaced it with LEDs, but they just pull so much less current than the OEM bulbs that it does trigger that hyperflash to let the rider know that something's going on. Now with that being said, the reason that ours is not is because we've actually gone ahead and installed our relay on this bike in advance, knowing that we're gonna do this video in particular. So if you guys do wanna touch on that relay installation, it is something that you might wanna consider when picking these up. We do have a video that will be pertaining to that relay installation. It's pretty convoluted, it's actually up underneath the tank, but if you guys wanna follow along, we do have another video on our YouTube channel just for that. If you guys want to pick up these products, these BL6 signals, possibly the flush mounts or that relay, go ahead and visit our website at tstindustries.com. If you guys like this video and want to see more stuff like this, give it a thumbs up, definitely hit subscribe, maybe even hit that little notification bell. We'll catch you guys next time.